"I think it's time we stop pretending," she said as she pulled her cardigan tighter like she was the one being violated. I stood there, barefoot in the hallway, still holding the plate of reheated lasagna I'd brought her after she claimed she had a migraine and needed to rest early. The lasagna was sliding off the side, cheese still bubbling. She was in a silk robe, not the one I gave her last Christmas, but the one she only ever wore when she was entertaining. And I swear, I could still smell cologne in the room. Something citrusy, synthetic, and definitely not mine. Then came the line. That line. "It's not what it looks like." She smiled when she said it. Smiled. As if I just walked in on her wrapping a surprise gift. As if her face wasn't flushed and her hair wasn't still damp. As if she didn't just shove someone's shoes under the bed with her foot. I didn't answer. I didn't yell. I didn't drop the plate or make a scene. I just nodded, placed the dish gently on her nightstand, and walked out. Let her wonder what I saw. Let her guess what I knew. She thought silence meant ignorance. No, sweetheart, silence means calculation. I slept in the den that night. She didn't come down. Not even a fake apology. Just went right back to her performance. The next morning, she was cheerful again. Like clockwork. She even made pancakes, burned like always, and asked me if I could pick up balloons for our son's birthday party the following week. No mention of the night before. No flinch. No shame. But here's the thing. She forgot I used to do fraud investigations. Forgot who taught her how to read a credit report, how to track a transaction, how to notice patterns. She forgot I remember everything, even the details she thinks don't matter. Like the locked drawer in her vanity. Or the fact that she never signs in blue ink, only black. Always. That morning, when she went to grab coffee with Megan, I opened the drawer. And there it was, an envelope tucked inside a folded workout shirt. Blue ink signature. LabCorp header. And the name at the bottom? Not hers. It was mine. My name. My signature. On a paternity test. A test I never took. And here's where it got real cold. The test wasn't for our youngest. No. It was for our oldest, our son. The one I coach every Little League season. The one who calls me Coach Dad because I never missed a single game. The one turning 12 next week. I sat in the den again that night, turning the paper over and over, wondering how long she'd been sitting on it. Wondering why she faked my signature. Wondering who the hell pushed her to get it done in the first place. And why, if she already knew the result, she hadn't said a damn thing. Unless, maybe she didn't know the result yet. Maybe she was afraid to look. Or maybe she did look. And was just waiting for the party. With the bounce house and the hot dogs and the stupid magician. She thought we'd smile for the camera and go back to playing house. But I was done performing. So I made a call. Not to her. Not to the guy I suspected, yet. I called someone who never flinched in a courtroom. Who smelled blood in legal briefs the way sharks smell it in the ocean. I called my attorney. And I told him, show up next Saturday. We're something nice. Bring the folder. Don't say a word until I nod. He chuckled. Is this going to be messy? No, I said. It's going to be quiet. Just long enough for her world to split in half. Because the thing about silence? It isn't weakness. It's fuel. The week leading up to the party was a damn Oscar-worthy performance from her. You'd think nothing had happened. No mysterious signature, no silk robe stinking of cheap cologne, no fraudulent paternity test hidden like a landmine. Just cupcakes, gift bags, and Pinterest-perfect decorations. She even ordered a custom cake with our son's baseball number on it. 12 years of magic, the frosting red. Funny, 12 years of what, exactly? Lies? Manipulation? Keeping the mask on long enough for me to keep playing the role of the proud fool? I didn't confront her. I didn't tip my hand. I let her run the show, let her smile through the prep, let her drop names of neighbors and friends and act like everything was fine. But I noticed things. That she was texting more than usual. That she kept slipping off into the garage or backyard to take calls. That when she thought I wasn't looking, she checked her reflection in the hallway mirror like she was trying on different versions of herself. And then there was him. I didn't have a name yet. But I had something. At first, it was just a gut feeling. Then it became a timeline. See, every Saturday she'd volunteer at a local shelter, something she only started doing about 8 months ago, right around the time she stopped wanting sex, stopped asking about my day, and started closing her laptop whenever I walked in. And one Saturday, I drove past the shelter to surprise her with lunch. She wasn't there. The receptionist gave me a confused look when I asked for her by name. She hasn't been here in weeks, she said. Oh, so that's what the migraine Saturdays were. I didn't confront her then either. I just turned the car around, drove to a parking garage 3 blocks away, and sat, waiting, watching. 37 minutes later, I saw her car pull into a spot across the street. She got out, smoothed her blouse, grabbed her purse, and then he appeared. Not young, not flashy, but smug, balding a bit. Drove a maroon Lexus with a dealership tag still on the plate frame. He kissed her like he'd done it 100 times, and then they walked inside a little brunch spot like it was their anniversary. I didn't follow. Didn't need to. My heart wasn't pounding. My jaw wasn't clenched. Just quiet. Focused. She was playing the wrong kind of game with the wrong kind of man. And what made it worse? The way she came home later that afternoon carrying takeout for me. Said, I thought you'd like pad thai. I know it's your favorite. Pad thai. She fed me his leftovers. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened the fireproof lockbox in the closet. Inside were old tax returns, birth certificates, and a USB drive labeled 2013 hospital video. Our son's birth. I hadn't watched it since the week after we brought him home. She said it was too raw for her, made her cry. Funny, she never cried about anything else after that. Not when her dad died. Not even when we had that bad miscarriage. So I plugged in the USB and watched. I noticed something strange. The nurse asked if I wanted to cut the cord. I did. I remember that. But then the nurse asked, do you want to hold him first, or should Dad? And my wife said, let him hold the baby. Not you. Not honey. Not my husband. Him. Let him hold the baby. And the way she said it, it wasn't just exhaustion. It wasn't just slipping up. It was intentional. Like I wasn't the man she just had a child with, but a witness. Like she already knew he wasn't mine. I sat back in my chair, breathing through my nose, while that video kept playing on a loop. It wasn't just cheating. It was orchestration. This wasn't a slip-up. This was a plan. 12 years of bedtime stories and science fairs and scraped knees, and I was the insurance policy. The buffer. The camouflage. And that test she forged my name on? That wasn't about the truth. That was about timing. She was trying to control when it came out. And who got to speak first. But I'd already made sure that wouldn't be her. That's when I made the second call. To the lab. Confirmed the test. Confirmed the sample. Confirmed the date. Confirmed that she didn't just forge my signature. She had someone else submit a sample for me. Someone who matched the same blood type. Which told me something chilling. He's done this before. The man she's seeing, he wasn't just a midlife fling. He was methodical. He was dangerous. He knew how to cover tracks, which meant I had to move fast and smart. So I gathered the documents. All of them. The video, the lab confirmation, the fraudulent signature report, and one more thing. That small, silver baseball keychain our son gave me 2 years ago. It had a tiny chip in it, a tracker. He gave it to me as a Father's Day joke. I kept it in my drawer. Never used it. Until now. And I dropped it into her purse when she went to the bathroom. Because I wasn't done watching. Not by a long shot. The night before the party, I lay awake on the couch, listening to her in the kitchen reheating some speech she was clearly dying to give. I couldn't make out every word, just snippets. Grateful for this family. 12 wonderful years. Couldn't have done it without? Without who? Me? Or the man she's been sneaking off with behind our backs? I didn't move. Just stared at the ceiling fan, letting each rotation match my heartbeat, slow and deliberate. I had the folder tucked under the couch cushion, the one my lawyer had couriered to me earlier that day in an unmarked envelope. Inside were the test results, the forged documents, the certified lab response confirming the fraud, and a sworn affidavit from the notary who confirmed the signature on file didn't match mine. All neat. All quiet. Ready for tomorrow. She went to bed around 11. I heard her door close, the little click she thought I couldn't hear. I waited another 10 minutes. Then I got up and opened the side drawer in the kitchen where she kept the miscellaneous stuff. And I found it. The invitation list. 22 names. Kids. Parents. Neighbors. Some of my coworkers. And one name that stopped me cold. Dr. Andrew Voss. I didn't recognize it at first. But then I remembered the dealership frame on that maroon Lexus. Voss Lexus. She'd invited him to our son's party. Bold, right? Inviting the man you're cheating with to your child's party while your husband, your dupe, stands on the grill flipping burgers for everyone? That told me something vital. She thought I was so far gone, so neutered, so soft, that she could shove it right in my face, and I'd still be the clown holding the balloon pump. She didn't know the balloon pump was loaded. That night, I went to the garage and pulled out the box marked Christmas lights. Hidden inside wasn't tinsel or ornaments. It was the external hard drive I hadn't touched since my security consulting days. Infrared snapshots, cam logs, transcripts. Paranoia? Maybe. But when you've seen the things I've seen, you don't throw away tools. You wait for the day they're needed. I connected it to my laptop, pulled up a folder called scrap_old_2019. And in there, audio backups from when I'd helped a friend set up a conference room wiretap for a legal arbitration. I found a clean recording tool, loaded a fresh SD card, set up the voice-activated device in the basement rafters, right above the folding tables we were setting for the party. Why? Because she loved hosting in the basement. Said it was cooler for the guests. And I knew her. Knew she'd bring him down there when everyone was distracted upstairs. Knew she'd whisper something she thought no one would hear. And this time, someone would. The next morning, I dressed like a dad ready to please. Polo shirt, sneakers, big dumb grin. Played the part. Neighbors arrived first. Then the kids. Then the bouncing castle guy. Then her. She came down the stairs wearing a sundress, not the kind of mom wears, but the kind a woman wears when she wants to be noticed. Hair curled, earrings swinging, and a glass of pre-party sangria, already half empty. She looked at me and smiled. Try not to burn the burgers this year, okay? I smiled back. I'll do my best. At noon, he arrived. Dr. Andrew Voss. Introduced as a friend from the shelter. Older than I expected. Tanned. Immaculate teeth. Wore sunglasses like he was at a movie premiere. Smiled at everyone like they were beneath him. Shook hands with my neighbors. Even tried to fist bump our son. I watched his hand hang in the air for a second too long. Good boy. The party kicked off. Kids screaming. Adults laughing. Music playing. And then she slipped away. I saw her look around first, classic tells. Then she touched his shoulder and nodded toward the basement. He followed. I gave it 5 minutes. Then I walked over to my lawyer, who had just arrived. Dark blue suit. Aviators. Brought his own chair. That's why I liked him. I leaned in and said one word. Now. He stood slowly, like he wasn't in a rush. Pulled the envelope from inside his blazer. I followed him to the basement. We didn't need to open the door yet. The recorder was live. But what we did need was them to see us. So I opened the door. There they were. Her hand on his chest. His voice low. And when they looked up, she froze. But he smirked. Like he'd won something. And then my lawyer stepped forward, held up the envelope like it was a damn wedding invitation, and said, Ms. Whitman, you may want to read this before cake. And the second she saw the letterhead, her smile disappeared. But she hadn't seen the signature yet. Not yet. That was for the crowd upstairs. The room went quiet in an instant. One of those silences that doesn't just swallow sound, but seems to freeze motion, like the whole basement held its breath. She stared at the envelope like it was ticking. Voss. He didn't even flinch. The man had the dead-eyed calm of a surgeon or a sociopath. He just adjusted his cuffs and leaned casually against the folding table, like this was all beneath him. You're making a scene, she said, voice just above a whisper, her smile barely holding shape. I'm not making anything, I replied. But you've been busy. Thought you deserved a little recognition. She reached for the envelope, hesitating just enough to betray her nerves. Then she ripped it open like she was hoping it would explode and end everything quickly. First page, the certified lab statement. Second, the notarized comparison between her forged signature and mine. Third, the paternity test result. Negative. Bold, undeniable. My name at the top. Our son's name below. And a cold scientific sentence that said what she never had the guts to. I am not his biological father. Her hand started to shake. What is this? This is a mistake, she said, trying to pass it back like it was an error on a restaurant check. This isn't. Andrew, say something. He looked at her, raised one eyebrow, and said, flatly, You told me he knew. Boom. There it was. Like a crack through glass. That split second where her entire facade fractured. I watched it happen in her eyes. The realization. The panic. Not about what was written, but that I had known all along, and she played straight into it. She reached for me like she was about to say something tender, maybe throw in a tear or two. "You're making a mistake," she murmured. "Let's talk upstairs, please, not here. This isn't the time." "Funny," I said, "because you had 12 years and a million times to come clean. And you waited until I found it in your sock drawer next to a fake migraine pill bottle." I stepped past her, not touching her, not even giving her the satisfaction of a shove or yell. Just cold air and silence. Voss moved to block the steps slightly, until my lawyer cleared his throat. One glance from him, and the doctor backed off. He wasn't going to play hero. Not here. Not when there were guests upstairs who didn't yet know that the friend from the shelter was about to become the most infamous man in our zip code. Back upstairs, the party was still going, clueless. My son was trying to pop a balloon with his foot, two neighbor kids shrieking behind him. I looked at him, and everything inside me wanted to forget what I knew. Just for a second. He had my stubborn chin, my laugh, my love for backyard barbecue chips. But that was the thing. None of that came from blood. I taught him to laugh. I taught him to fight fair. I taught him how to lace his cleats and wipe tears without shame. He was my son, but she didn't give a damn about that. To her, I was a tool. I took the envelope, calmly walked to the makeshift podium we had set up near the cake table, and tapped the mic like I was about to give a toast. A few heads turned. Some parents smiled. A kid threw a foam dart and missed my head by an inch. "Sorry to interrupt," I said, voice even. "I just want to say a few words before we cut the cake." She came up the stairs behind me, fast. I heard her breathless voice. "Don't." But I held up one finger. "I'd like to thank everyone for coming today," I said. 12 years ago, I held my son in a hospital room and promised I'd be there for him. No matter what. Pause. Let it sit. I kept that promise. Even when it was hard. Even when things didn't make sense. Even when I was told lies. Now the air changed. People were turning. Whispers starting. And today, I want to share something. Not because it's dramatic, but because sometimes truth deserves daylight. I held up the last page of the packet, the lab result. Didn't read it aloud. Just turned it, slowly, and set it on the cake table. Murmurs spread. One mom gasped. She lunged forward. "You bastard. This is a birthday party. He's your son." "No," I said quietly. "He's our son. But I'm the only one who treated him that way." And that's when my lawyer stepped forward again. Calm, deliberate. He handed her a second envelope. She opened it. Inside, a petition for full custody, filed that morning. But the final twist? It was co-signed. Not just by me, but by my wife's father. Her face went white. Because he knew. And he'd known for longer than I had. She didn't scream. She staggered. Like someone had knocked the air clean out of her with a swing she never saw coming. The room was dead silent now. Music cut. Kids hushed. Balloons floating aimlessly like they sensed the shift. My son looked from me to her, confused. One frosting-stained hand still gripping a red plastic fork. I locked eyes with him for a moment. Long enough to see it register that something bigger than a missed birthday candle was happening. She turned to her father, who had arrived just minutes earlier, still in his church jacket, pressed slacks, and those loafers he only wore when he wanted people to think he was distinguished. "Dad," she said, voice cracking, "you signed this." He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took off his glasses, cleaned them slowly with the edge of his cuff, then looked her dead in the eye. "I did." And just like that, the last bit of structure holding her up gave way. I don't understand," she whispered, eyes darting, searching for someone, anyone, to jump in and fix this. "Why would you? You knew this was going to happen, and you didn't tell me?" He stepped forward, calm, heavy. "Because I saw you, Emma. That night at the Lakewood Clinic. You weren't alone. I saw him. I followed you." She stumbled back. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You spied on me?" "No," he said. "I woke up. I saw the look in your eyes. You weren't scared. You were smug. And when I asked you later that night if everything was okay, you lied to me so easily it made my skin crawl." She covered her mouth with her hands, but it was too late. Everyone was watching now. The neighbors. The PTA moms. The dads who had shaken her friend's hand not 15 minutes ago. It was like slow-motion social collapse, one sideways glance at a time. Her father looked at me next. "I wanted to tell you sooner," he said. But I needed proof. I needed to be sure she wouldn't twist it. So I waited. And I signed the papers the moment I had what I needed. He turned to the lawyer. Everything's notarized, stamped, and sealed. My lawyer replied, smooth as a blade. And the audio, her father added. My lawyer didn't even blink. Already uploaded. Labeled. Stored securely. That was the kill shot. Her breath hitched. She knew what that meant. Basement. 5 minutes alone with Andrew. Voice activated, mic captured and saved. She looked at me now, eyes wide, pleading. You bugged me. No, I said. You bugged yourself. You chose the setting. You brought the guest. You delivered the monologue. I just hit record. Andrew, still lingering near the stairs, finally opened his mouth. I didn't consent to being recorded. My lawyer turned to him and smirked. It's a single-party consent state, doctor. And she's the one who initiated the conversation. Try your luck in civil court. See how that goes after this circus. The smug peeled off Andrew's face like old paint. He grabbed his coat. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't even look at her. Just walked out the door, past the bounce house, past the folding tables, right through a crowd of parents who now whispered like they were in church. She didn't chase him. Didn't dare. Instead, she turned back toward the cake, toward our son, and realized too late. This wasn't just about her and me anymore. It was about everyone she used as a prop. Every lie she told wasn't just to me, it was to him, the boy we both claimed to protect. But now the veil had been lifted, and he was looking at her with something far worse than anger. He was looking at her like a stranger. Mom, he asked quietly, is he really not my dad? Her lips trembled. Sweetheart, don't, I said. Not here. Not now. And for once, she listened. She didn't argue, didn't defend. She just stood there, arms limp, mouth open. Party's over, I said. Thanks for coming, everyone. And one by one, they left. No goodbyes. No handshakes. Just doors closing and quiet shoes on pavement. I waited until it was just the three of us left. Me, her, our son. And then I knelt down to him, level with his eyes. Nothing's changing for you, I said. You're my son. That's not negotiable. He blinked. But you said. I said biology's got nothing to do with being a father. You know who taught you how to ride a bike? He nodded. You. You know who sat in the ER with you when you broke your wrist? You. You know who stayed up with you when you were sick, when you had nightmares, when you were scared of the dark? You. I smiled. That's never going to change. And he nodded. But when I stood up, her eyes were already wet. Not with guilt. With fear. Because she finally understood. The damage wasn't loud. It was surgical. And I wasn't done yet. She didn't come home that night. Didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't even attempt one of her usual, we need to talk softballs. The house was dead silent, aside from the dryer tumbling his baseball uniform, because the next day was still a game day. Life doesn't stop just because someone tried to dismantle it. Our son stayed quiet, too. Sat on the couch holding that old glove I'd given him for his 7th birthday. Didn't cry. Didn't ask questions. He just sat there, chewing the same inside of his cheek the way I do when I'm thinking too hard. I let him stay up late. We watched some dumb movie he liked, and I didn't ask how he was feeling. Not because I didn't care, because I knew if I opened that door too early, it'd flood. So instead, I just said, you and me, bud. Game's still on tomorrow. He nodded. You'll still coach. Always. He smiled, and it wasn't big, but it was real. And right now, real was a miracle. She still didn't show up the next morning. But something else did. An envelope. Unmarked, slid halfway under the front door like it was ashamed to be seen. Inside, a single handwritten page. Not her handwriting. His. Andrew Voss. It read, this got bigger than it was ever supposed to be. I didn't sign up for this kind of exposure. I advise you to move forward peacefully. Discretion is in both our best interests. No apology. No denial. No ownership. Just a warning. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't some desperate housewife midlife meltdown. This had layers, and Voss wasn't some clueless fling. He was orchestrating, managing, threatening. And Emma? She was a participant, or a pawn. Time to find out which. So I pulled out something from the office drawer I hadn't touched in 5 years, a little black notebook labeled simply, Contingencies. Back when I did private security consulting, I learned fast that every digital trace left a footprint. But old school? Paper, ink, memory, that could still bury a man quietly. In that notebook, I had names. Two of them, clients who once flagged Voss in a background scan years ago when he applied for a board seat at a private research hospital. His references hadn't checked out. One had disappeared. The other? Fired for falsifying trial data. That notebook was dusty, sure, but what it gave me was direction. I called in a favor to a guy named Curtis who owed me from a fraud reversal job back in 2016. Curtis was a ghost now, off the grid mostly, but reachable if you knew how to leave the right kind of voicemail. He called back 2 hours later. Voss is poison, he said flatly. You've got no idea how far that guy's reach goes. Clinics, shell companies, trusts with other people's names. One of those types that never gets dirty but always smells like bleach. Does he have others? More than a few. You looking for revenge or insurance? Both. Curtis laughed. I'll send a file. Just don't open it where your kid can see. The email came encrypted, password protected with a code only I knew. I downloaded it on a burner tablet, the one I used for travel back when I still trusted airports. Inside the folder? Photos. Bank transfers. A shell account labeled under my wife's name that she clearly didn't create herself. $5,000 deposits every month for the last 6 months. Consulting services, with a vague reference to clinic outreach. The clinic she never actually volunteered at. He'd been paying her. To keep quiet? To help him access something? To serve as his cover? I didn't know yet. But I knew one thing now. Emma wasn't just unfaithful. She was compromised. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't realize how deep in she was. So I waited. And sure enough, just after midnight that night, the garage door opened. I sat in the dark at the kitchen table. She walked in like a shadow, keys rattling, hair pulled back, face pale. Not a trace of her usual show. She saw me sitting there. Didn't even flinch. I'm not here to fight, she said. Good, I replied. Then sit. She did. Slow. Like she expected the chair to collapse. I slid the printout of the shell deposits across the table. She didn't touch it, but her eyes said it all. You took money from him, I said, while lying to me. Lying to our son. Lying to everyone. Her voice was a whisper. I didn't know what it was for. He said it was a consulting setup. That it was clean. You thought $5,000 a month for non-existent volunteer work was clean. She stayed quiet. But I saw it. The panic in her throat. The way her hands fidgeted like they wanted to grab something. Hide something. Undo something that couldn't be undone. You signed something, didn't you? I asked. No answer. You signed something, Emma. What was it? She looked up at me with tears that almost worked. And then she said, I think I signed guardianship documents. Temporary. He said it was for the grant paperwork. That it made things easier with funding. I didn't read it. I swear, I didn't know. My stomach went cold. Guardianship. Of our son? No. No. That wasn't just betrayal. That was war. And now? There was no going back. She said it so quietly, I almost didn't catch it. I think I signed guardianship documents. Not temporary custody, not a medical release form, not some school permission slip. Guardianship. The kind of legal designation that could make a man like Andrew Voss more than just a shadow in the background. It meant he could act on behalf of my son. And she signed it. Didn't read it. Didn't question it. Didn't even think to tell me. She had handed over legal power to a man who wasn't blood, wasn't married to her, wasn't even on a lease. A man who made his money laundering identities through shell companies. A man who had already tried to intimidate me into silence. I stood up. My legs didn't even feel like they belonged to me anymore. My hands weren't shaking, but they were cold. Like my body already knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. You gave him a piece of my son, I said. No, she shot back, finally raising her voice. I didn't mean to, he said. He told me it was just for grant purposes, for clinic insurance. He said it would protect us. Protect us. That phrase did something to me. Like someone flicked a switch I'd buried under a decade of patience. I leaned forward over the table. You know what's funny, Emma? I said. You always talked about how safe you felt with him. How seen. And the whole time, he was buying you off like a rented storage unit. And you, God, you were grateful for it. Tears started falling. I didn't care. You handed him paperwork that gave him access to our kid. And you didn't even think to ask what it meant. She opened her mouth, probably to launch into another sad sack explanation, but I was already gone. In my office, ripping through files, I pulled out the original birth certificate, the custody paperwork, the insurance forms, and then I saw something that made my throat tighten. A faxed copy of an insurance policy change from 6 weeks ago, with my son's name listed as the primary dependent under a new medical provider. Not our family plan. The provider? Voss Wellness Holdings, LLC. She had changed his insurance provider, and I hadn't even seen it. I walked back into the kitchen and dropped it in front of her. Her eyes went wide. No, that's not. He said it was for coverage. It was cheaper. I didn't think. Exactly, I snapped. You didn't think. You didn't ask. You didn't question why a man who wasn't married to you, who had no blood relation to your child, would need to be in control of his insurance. She tried to stand. I stopped her with a look. This isn't about you anymore, I said. This is about undoing what you did before he uses it. Because I had a sick feeling, one I couldn't shake, that Andrew Voss hadn't just wanted access. He wanted ownership. The next morning, I made 2 calls. First, to my lawyer. Run a full trace on every document Emma's name is attached to over the last year. I want to know if anything with our son's name was signed electronically or in hard copy. He didn't ask why. He heard it in my voice. Second call was to someone I never thought I'd call again, Ramon Flores. He used to work cybercrime cases for the state. Got disillusioned, disappeared into private consulting. The kind of guy who could scrub a name out of a federal database before lunch. We hadn't spoken in years, but when he picked up, he said, I heard about your birthday party. That kind of fireworks usually gets around. I need a trace on a wellness company, Voss Holdings, and I need to know if they're flagged under any medical research violations, guardianship transfers, or child subject trials. There was a pause. You said child? Yes. Another pause. Then Ramon said, I'll call you back tonight. 12 hours later, my phone buzzed. One text. We have a problem. He's flagged in 3 states. 2 under review for unauthorized behavioral research. And 1 sealed lawsuit with a minor's initials that match your son's. I stared at the message until my fingers went numb. It wasn't just fraud. It wasn't just betrayal. It was experimentation. My wife hadn't just cheated. She'd handed our child to a man who had been quietly running behavioral research trials on minors. Trials that had already triggered lawsuits. The kind that get sealed when settlements are made and reputations are on the line. And now, that man had access to my son's medical decisions. Guardianship. Insurance. The perfect setup. All without a single call to me. That night, as Emma sat silently in the corner of the living room, hugging a pillow like a child, I didn't speak to her. I packed a bag. Then I packed a second one. One for me. One for my son. Because by sunrise, we were disappearing. Before Voss could make his next move. Before she could warn him. Before whatever he had planned next became irreversible. I didn't leave a note. Didn't slam a door. Didn't take anything I couldn't carry. At 5:14 a.m., while the sky was still bleeding purple into gray, I gently shook my son awake, told him we were going on a trip, and helped him into a hoodie and his old sneakers. He didn't ask questions. Just grabbed his baseball glove, like that was all he needed. We left through the side door. Quiet. No lights. I didn't even shut the garage fully in case she woke up and heard the click. There was no time to explain what I couldn't undo yet. I drove 2 hours south to a cabin I used to lease out to contractors during wildfire season. Remote. No neighbors. No digital footprint. I still paid utilities under a corporate shell I'd set up years ago for consulting purposes, completely disconnected from my name. Off the grid. We arrived just before sunrise. He asked if this was like a vacation. Kind of, I said. But more important, he nodded. Kids are sharper than we give them credit for. I made him pancakes. Real ones, scratch mix, blueberries, butter. While he ate, I powered up the encrypted tablet and opened the file Ramon had sent me at 3:21 a.m. More records. More rot. Turns out Voss Wellness Holdings had recently applied for a secondary trial license in a neighboring state, testing long-term adolescent response to neuroregulatory stimuli. That's government speak for behavioral control. The kind they don't do unless they think the kids have no legal guardians who'll push back. And guess what? Emma's signed guardianship waiver put our son right on the eligibility list. It wasn't about a fake relationship anymore. It was about access. Emma was his Trojan horse. And I'd been the wall he'd been working to sneak past. Slowly. Quietly. Until now. I called Ramon. He picked up immediately. You saw it? I saw it. There's more. Go. One of the sealed court filings in Colorado used initials and a birth date that matches your kid almost exactly. Not your son, probably, but close enough to matter. That lawsuit ended in a payout. Heavy NDA penalties. You know what that means. He settled. And silenced. But the common thread? Every parent who filed didn't know. Guardianship was always routed through a third party. Someone in a romantic relationship with a cosigner. My stomach turned. Emma wasn't the first. But if I had anything to do with it, she'd damn well be the last. Back at the house, Emma had woken up to silence. No son. No husband. No keys in the tray. She called me 11 times. I let them all go to voicemail. Then I sent her one text. You handed over guardianship. Now I'm taking it back. For good. She didn't reply. Instead, she called my lawyer. Mistake number 1. He recorded the call. Sent me the transcript. She begged. Then threatened. Then cried. Claimed she was tricked, that she'd been scared, that she was manipulated by someone smarter. My lawyer asked one question. So why didn't you come clean when you had the chance? At the birthday party? In the basement? When you saw the lab results? She hung up. Classic Emma. All emotion, no accountability. And now she was starting to realize there was no way to spin this. Because while she played seductress with a scalpel-precise sociopath I had been building, I had already filed an emergency injunction to revoke guardianship privileges for all third parties associated with my son, citing fraudulent consent and coercion. My lawyer had already secured a protective order barring Voss from making contact. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. There was one final piece. Something Voss hadn't expected me to keep. Remember that little silver baseball keychain? The one with the hidden GPS chip my son gave me as a joke? She'd left her purse wide open the night before she disappeared, and I had quietly slipped it inside again. Rearmed. I pulled up the tracker. Ping. Voss's Lexus. Parked at a building in a downtown strip mall, nondescript on the outside. But behind it? A private research facility leased under a different name, Ardent Cognitive Institute. One of the sub-entities Ramon flagged. I screenshotted the ping. Timestamped. GPS verified. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I picked up the phone, called a contact in the state child welfare department, and gave them everything. The lab results. The false guardianship. The insurance transfer. The behavioral trial filings. And the ping. I expected her to hesitate. Instead, she said, we've had eyes on them for months. But we were missing a parent with standing. You have one now, I said. And hung up. By sunset, we were still at the cabin. My son was drawing at the table. I was watching the road. Then, one last text came in. From Ramon. It's happening. He's being raided right now. I closed my eyes. Let the silence settle. But I wasn't celebrating yet. Because the only thing more dangerous than a man like Voss on the rise is a man like Voss cornered. It started with the silence. Not the good kind. The kind that presses in around you like a storm's coming. The kind where birds vanish and the trees don't move and your gut says run, even when your mind hasn't caught up yet. We were finishing dinner, grilled cheese, cut diagonally the way he liked, when I noticed the landline blink. The cabin doesn't have service. No cell towers. No broadband. But the line's old, wired in, meant for emergency use. It blinked again. No ring on. Just a single red light. I answered. No greeting. Just breathing. Then a voice, calm, surgical. You made a very poor decision. It was him. Voss. I didn't say a word. I let him fill the silence, the way people like him have to. They need control. They need reaction. You've ruined something that was bigger than you'll ever understand, he said. But I'll give you a single out. Bring him back. Quietly. No police. No lawyers. Just you and me. You'll walk away. So will he. I said nothing. The call ended with a click so soft it almost felt polite. 30 minutes later, the front motion light went out. Not on out. Someone had cut power to the exterior rig. Backup batteries still worked. Just barely. I moved fast. Got my son into the crawl space under the back closet. Reinforced hatch, old hunting gear, sleeping bags, canned food, burner phone. Told him it was a game. Told him to stay silent. He didn't even cry. Just nodded. Then I locked him in. I waited by the front door with the same baseball bat I'd used as a kid. Aluminum. Den from a championship game in '91. I don't own a gun. Never needed one. But I've studied people like Voss long enough to know they don't get their hands dirty unless things are slipping out of their control. And right now, he was losing everything. The custody injunction. The guardianship reversal. The raid on his institute. His sealed trials getting unsealed. His shell accounts frozen. All thanks to one man who was supposed to stay silent. Me. So I waited. And just before 10 p.m., I saw headlights. Slow. Deliberate. Like a snake slithering up to a rabbit's den, sure it wouldn't be seen. I killed the lights inside. Let the house go black. The car idled for a moment. Then the engine died. I waited by the door, bat raised. Footsteps on gravel. Once said. Then, tap, tap, tap. He didn't knock like a man. He tapped. Measured. Creepy. Like this was a damn performance and I was the only one in the audience. I waited. Then another voice joined as female. Choked. Strained. Emma. She said one thing. Please, just talk to him. He said he won't leave until he sees you. And I knew, right then, she'd brought him. Maybe not by force. Maybe not even willingly. But she'd led him here. I opened the door. That low. Voss stood there in a dark coat, no tie, sleeves rolled. Hair slicked back like this was a board meeting. Emma behind him, pale, mascara smeared, shaking. You made this very difficult, he said. No. You did. You're scared, he said. You should be. The people I work with don't take this lightly. Do you understand what you've stepped into? I looked him dead in the eye. I understand exactly what I stepped into. And so does the federal investigator who's probably got your email logs on a monitor right now. That landed. His jaw twitched. I raised the bat just slightly. Then the backup floodlight kicked and solar-charged. Lit him up like a stage actor. He flinched. That's when I showed him the second phone, the one Ramon had shipped over with the active wiretap app running. Every word, I said. Every breath you've taken in the last 2 minutes? Recorded. Timestamped. Geotagged. His face finally cracked. You don't know what you're doing. I stepped out onto the porch. I know what I'm undoing. Starting with you. Then, from behind the cabin. Sirens. 2 black Suburbans. No logos. No lights. But the suits that got out? Federal. Emma gasped. Voss turned, started to run, stupid. They were on him in 4 seconds. Face down in the gravel. No resistance. He knew. Emma dropped to her knees. Not crying. Just stunned. I watched them cuff him. Read his rights. One agent turned to me. You're Mr. Whitman? I nodded. Got your file. Solid work. You'll want to come by for the full debrief. I will. I didn't look at Emma. Didn't speak. I just walked to the back room, opened the closet hatch. My son looked up, eyes wide. It's over, I said. But it wasn't. Not quite. Because the final move, the one they never saw coming, was still in my hands. And I planned to drop it in court. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not the temperature, the atmosphere. Sterile, clinical, like justice was something that had to be refrigerated to stay fresh. Emma sat 3 rows back, behind her counsel, clutching a tissue that hadn't caught a single tear. Her face was gaunt, hollow. She looked like someone who had cried every drop out of herself and still came up dry. Voss wasn't there. He was sitting somewhere a lot colder. Federal holding. Awaiting trial on charges that spanned wire fraud, medical ethics violations, unlawful human experimentation, and custodial interference. His legal team was already trying to argue diminished capacity. Classic. But today wasn't about him. It was about my son, and who he belonged to on paper. Forever. My attorney stood, calm and ironclad, and slid the final document across the judge's bench. A custody revision. Sole parental authority transferred to me. Based not just on Emma's betrayal, but on the evidence of reckless endangerment, willful negligence, and, here's the kicker, co-conspiracy and fraud against a minor. Her lawyer tried to object. Some mealy-mouthed argument about intent and emotional distress. The judge cut him off after 20 seconds. This court has reviewed the full testimony, she said. And there's no ambiguity here. Then she looked directly at Emma. You allowed a non-spouse, non-guardian, unlicensed medical executive to assume partial custodial influence over a child. You submitted false documents. You transferred medical authority without disclosure. Whether or not you were manipulated, your son was endangered. Emma didn't move, didn't argue, didn't blink, because she knew what was coming. The judge signed the order, banged the gavel, and just like that, I had full legal custody. But that wasn't the end. As we stood to leave, Emma stood too. Not to stop me, not to speak, but to hold something out in her trembling hand. A folded sheet of paper. I didn't take it. I don't need another lie, I said, keeping my eyes on my son, who was waiting for me in the hallway. It's not a lie, she whispered. It's a confession. Everything. The grant. The forms. The money. I signed it. I already knew that. No, she said. You didn't know who pushed me to. That gave me pause. She held the paper tighter. Your brother, she said quietly. Ben. My breath froze. Ben. The man who helped me set up the consulting firm years ago. The man who introduced me to Voss at a charity gala 3 summers ago. The man who always said, she's lucky to have you, but never looked me in the eye when he said it. I took the paper, walked away without another word. Read it in the car. It wasn't just a confession. It was a trail. Emails. Receipts. A text chain from 2 years ago where Ben forwarded Emma's contact to Voss. Use her, he wrote. She's stupid enough. Just don't get caught. And at the very bottom, a bank transaction. From one of Voss's shadow trusts. To Ben. $75,000. Labeled, referral bonus. My hands were steady as I folded the page. My son looked at me from the passenger seat, still in his little blazer and clip-on tie. Are we okay now? He asked. I looked at him, smiled. We're better than okay. Then I handed the page to my lawyer, who was waiting at the curb. New case, I said. Same fire. Because betrayal doesn't always come from the bed. Sometimes, it comes from blood. And the best revenge is never loud. It's surgical, strategic, final.